Welcome back, guys, to the Hip Hop Report. I'm your host, Rambo Hustle. My chair is almost broke, but we're gonna keep pushing. Listen, guys, today we're talking about none other than the lost tapes. I'm gonna keep my hoodie on for this one. The new album from legendary Wu-Tang member Ghostface Killah, executive produced by my guy M80, one of the hardest working, one of the most dynamic people to come out of the city of Indianapolis, and he's not even from here, he's from Toledo. But by far one of the people that has really mentored me and showed me the ropes about business and how to stay focused, develop relationships, and really push the envelope on your potential. Now, with that being said, Ghostface Killah is also one of my top 3 Wu-Tang members of all time. So I have to say my expectations for this album won't be bought. If it was trash, I would have to tell you it was trash regardless of who put anything together. The fact of the matter is, guys, Ghostface Killah is one of the best storytellers, one of the best lyricists, one of the most dynamic voices in hip-hop in history. If you guys remember when Action Bronson came out, he got a lot of comparisons to him, and probably for the most part maybe one of the reasons why his rap career didn't quite push out as much as it could have, and he ended up doing TV shows where he cooks and eats food all day. Now, with that being said, guys, The Lost Tapes is a album perfectly crafted for a lover of the hip-hop sound, for a lover of what hip-hop is at its core, the essence of the culture, the essence of the sonic vibrations of the production, to the way the lyrics sit on the beat, to even the way the lyrics are formulated, put together, and assembled. Now, Ghostface Killah has similes, metaphors, and lines that if you don't even know his catalog, you still might not understand the line, because he goes in depth, and there's certain aliases and lingo that comes with the Wu-Tang brand that most people, especially some of you young kids, will not understand unless you've done your research and know your culture. Now, that's not to say that if you're a mumble rap aficionado that you should not check out this project. I think it's a great example of a project sonically that lets you understand and feel why all these people over 25 and over or 30 and over are so passionate about hip-hop and this particular sound and time. I mean, you know, every generation has their sound, every generation has their artists, but there's something about that 90s boom bop New York style rap that just really quenches the thirst of the soul and the feeling and emotion and the real struggle that hip hop was founded on. Now, the project starts off with hip hop aficionado Michael Rappaport. He has always been a spokesperson, a personality, supporter, and promoter of the culture and hip-hop music as a whole. Now, of course, with social media, he can expand way further than his acting roots, from, say, movies like Higher Learning and others, to, if you guys don't remember Remy, y'all gotta do your research and watch that. But now, with social media, Instagram, and a lot of other things going on, Michael Rappaport has extended his reach with his voice and his message, which is usually pretty New York style, vulgar, and in your face. And I don't expect anything less from him. I think he's entertaining, but he also holds the culture at its highest standard, which is something that we're lacking in today's culture quite often, because of the lack of importance on lyrics and content and the value of cohesiveness in albums, like we talked about before, in regards to, you know, watered down albums to patent up streams and make more money. Now, again, and if you're an OG that's been bitching for the last 10-15 years about this, about hip-hop not having any good music, nobody's putting out good records, nobody does anything real hip-hop anymore, if you don't get this album, then you're full of shit, you're a hypocrite. Because despite having amazing talents like Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, Vince Staples, and many others in the landscape of hip-hop, Mick Jenkins, you know, there's obviously still OGs and artists that we grew up on that are making music. However, even though T.I.'s Dime Trap album was solid and Lil Wayne's Carter 5 was solid, neither of those albums really quite sound like this. I'm just such a fan of the art and the way that certain artists can package something that's so cohesive. I mean, shit, man. Look at the artwork. This is the Mario Brothers Ghost with the Friday the 13th Ghostface Jason mask. The only time that I feel like this album really, at least in the first half for sure, that really stumbles a little bit is in Saigon Velour, and I only feel that way because I think the mix is a little bit undercooked. I think it doesn't have the same muscle and the same bass, you know, the same foundation and the same punch as the rest of the album. And I also, once I listened to it for the second and third time, I realized, well shit, we're also listening to Snoop and E40, two legendary West Coast artists, on a beat that's like predominantly just a very nitty gritty New York style boom bop New York beat, a sound that neither of those artists have ever really dived into and really like magnified in their own catalogs. E40, of course, being from the Bay, was the leader of his own movement and his own sound and his own culture from his own city, but never really tapped outside of that. Maybe did a couple Southern style records. Now, of course, Snoop started with Dre, and all that was instrumentation and Dr. Dre production from his 30,000 producers that he puppeteers into amazing production. And then after that, he went to No Limit. So even Snoop never really had a time where you heard him really working in those super New York style hip hop production. So I do think in a way maybe we're just not used to those voices on this style of production, and maybe it just threw me off a little bit. But I still feel like the mix was a little bit undercooked and needed a little bit more muscle. Now, a couple of the interludes from the album I think are actually, as a Wu-Tang Ghostface fan, I think are some of the most telling and interesting pieces of the whole album. That's not to take away from the music, but you know, to hear Ghostface talk about the industry now in comparison to the industry when he was coming up, and how he doesn't think Cream would have been successful or got any radio play at all, is kind of crazy. Just to think about one of the biggest hip hop records of all time, us being in a generation and in a landscape where a record like that wouldn't take off at all. And you know, maybe he's wrong, but at the end of the day, I don't think he is. I think unfortunately where we're at sonically with music and hip hop and where it's heading, it's so different from that sound that I don't think we can go backwards. But you know, that's definitely not to bring down the stature or the value of that record as, again, one of the most important records of hip hop history. Now, again, through those interludes, we also get another one where he talks about the creation of the artwork for the project and just how it all came about, and like his visual on how he wanted to present himself. And he also mentioned that he probably has another 2 to 3 albums on deck, which would put him close to almost 20 albums in his career, which is insane. Now, Done It Again, I think to me is probably one of the strongest records on the project in regards of this sound having a commercial and commercially viable record on the project. I think Done It Again definitely fulfills that. I don't know if they'll actually push it. You know, underground artists be trying to be like, oh, well, that shit could be a hit, but I don't want to sell out, so we just gonna keep this in the cut. So, like, the record is definitely has that appeal. It has that radio friendly, easy to listen to, universal sound to me. As soon as it came on, those sweeping samples, I just knew that that was the record that I felt had the potential to be commercially pushed out and potentially gravitate to an audience that is so desperately, well, they might not know it, but I just think it would be great to hear on radio something that's not trap, that's not ratchet, that you don't have to twerk to. You can just sit back, vibe, break one down, fill it back up, light that shit up, spark up, and ride out on a nice fall afternoon. Now, with that being said, guys, peace, love, and hip hop. This is Rambo Hustle with the Hip Hop Report. If you're still bitching about no real hip hop being out, make sure you go cop that Lost Tapes by Ghostface Killah. Peace, love, hip hop. Hey.
Back up on my bullshit like I'm mastermind in Watergate. Mixing on my wrist, ironic, dick right as an island say. I prefer you say you suckers acting like some bitch.